He woke up early as he did every day, before the sun had even started to rise. The small apartment he lived in was quiet, except for the soft hum of the old refrigerator and the faint creaking of the floorboards. The walls were painted a dull beige, peeling slightly at the corners, and the furniture was modest, some of it patched or repaired over the years. He didn't mind. He had never cared much for luxury. For him, life was about doing the right thing and taking care of those around him. He put on his work clothes, a faded blue uniform that had seen better days, and laced up his sturdy shoes. Breakfast was simple, just a piece of bread with a little jam and a cup of tea. Sometimes he wished for something more, but he never complained. He had learned early on that happiness didn't come from having more, but from doing what mattered and being kind when you could. By the time he left his apartment, the streets were already waking up. Vendors were setting up their stalls. Children were heading off to school. The first commuters were making their way to the train station. He carried his cleaning supplies in a worn-out bag slung over his shoulder, ready for another long day of work. He knew that his job wasn't glamorous. People often overlooked him, sometimes even ignored him entirely, but that never stopped him from doing his best. He took pride in keeping the station clean and safe, making sure that people could pass through without obstacles or accidents. When he arrived at the train station, it was already buzzing with activity. The platform was crowded, the sound of trains arriving and departing mingling with the chatter of passengers. He started his usual routine, sweeping the floors, picking up litter, and wiping down benches. The work was repetitive, but he found a kind of peace in it, a rhythm that kept his mind steady and focused. He noticed a group of schoolchildren running past, laughing and joking. One of the boys tripped on a loose tile, and without thinking, he was there to help him up. Brushing off the dirt from the child's uniform. "Careful there, son," he said with a gentle smile. The boy nodded, embarrassed but grateful. It was these small moments, these tiny connections with strangers, that made his day worthwhile. As he continued his work, he saw an elderly woman struggling with a heavy bag. He rushed over to help, lifting the bag for her and guiding her safely to a bench. "Thank you, young man," she said, her voice trembling with age. He just nodded and smiled. "It's nothing, ma'am. Happy to help." He didn't expect praise or recognition. For him, kindness was its own reward. The hours passed, and the station grew busier. The morning rush was always the most hectic, with people in a hurry, trains arriving and leaving on schedule, and the constant hum of activity. He moved quickly, efficiently, keeping an eye out for anything that might be dangerous. If someone dropped something, he picked it up. If a spill occurred, he cleaned it immediately. He knew that even the smallest oversight could lead to accidents, and he took that responsibility seriously. During a brief break, he sat on a bench near the platform, sipping water and watching the people around him. Some were lost in their phones, others were deep in conversation, and a few were simply staring out at the tracks, lost in thought. He wondered about their lives, imagining the stories they carried with them. Some seemed happy, some worried, and some indifferent. He thought about how interconnected everyone's lives were, even if they didn't realize it. A young couple walked by, holding hands and laughing softly. He smiled to himself, remembering his own younger days when life had felt full of hope and dreams. Though he had never married or had children, he found joy in watching the simple happiness of others. It reminded him that life could be beautiful in its quiet moments. He returned to his work, moving along the platform with practiced ease. His hands were steady, his movements deliberate, and his eyes alert. He had seen many things in his years at the station. Lost items, accidents, narrowly avoided, people in distress. Each situation required attention and care, and he approached them all with the same steady determination. Around midday, a small commotion caught his attention. A child had wandered too close to the edge of the platform, peering down at the tracks. The boy was unaware of the danger, distracted by a toy he held tightly in his hand. The janitor's heart skipped a beat. He rushed forward, placing himself between the boy and the edge, making sure the child was safe. "Hey, be careful," he said softly, but firmly. The boy looked up, startled, and nodded obediently. The parents, who had been distracted for just a moment, came running and thanked him profusely. He just waved them off, insisting that it was his duty as the day wore on. The heat of the sun made the work more tiring, but he never slowed down. He paused only to rest briefly, drinking water and wiping sweat from his brow. Every time he saw someone struggling, he stopped to help. A young woman dropped her wallet, and he chased after it to return it. An older man stumbled on the steps, and he offered an arm to steady him. Each act was small, but collectively, he defined the man's character. He often wondered if people ever noticed him, or if he was just a shadow moving through the station. But he didn't work for recognition. He worked because it was the right thing to do. He believed in the quiet power of kindness, the way it could ripple out into the world and touch lives in ways that were impossible to measure. He had seen it happen before, and he trusted that it would continue, even in ways he might never know. By evening, the station began to quiet down. The rush had ended, and only a few passengers remained, waiting for the last trains of the day. He walked through the emptying platform, making sure everything was in order, sweeping the last bits of dust and debris. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the tracks and painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was a peaceful moment, a rare quiet in the midst of the chaos that defined his daily life. As he packed up his supplies, he thought about the people he had helped that day and the small differences he had made. None of it was dramatic or world-changing, but it mattered. Every small act of care, every moment of attention, every kind word, it all added up to something meaningful. And he carried that sense of purpose with him as he headed home, tired but content. The walk back to his apartment was quiet, the streets now calm and dimly lit by the glow of street lamps. He passed the same vendors packing up, the same children heading home, and the same neighbors greeting him with a nod or a smile. He returned their greetings, appreciating the small community he was a part of. Life was simple, yes, but it was filled with connections and moments of meaning that could not be bought or sold. When he finally arrived home, prepared a modest dinner, ate slowly, and reflected on the day. There were no grand adventures, no dramatic rescues, and no recognition. But in his heart, he knew he had done what mattered. He had been present, attentive, and kind. And in a world that often overlooks such things, that was enough. As he lay down to sleep that night, he thought about tomorrow. Another day at the station, another chance to help someone, another opportunity to do what was right. He closed his eyes, feeling a sense of calm and purpose. Life was not about fame or fortune, he reminded himself. It was about being human, about caring, about making the world a little better, one small act at a time. And with that thought, he drifted into sleep, ready for whatever the next day would bring. The next morning, he woke up before dawn, just like every other day. The streets were quiet, and the air smelled faintly of damp earth and the smoke from early morning traffic. He put on his uniform and laced his shoes tightly, feeling the familiar weight of the workday ahead. There was a sense of calm in the routine, a rhythm he had learned to embrace over the years. He carried his cleaning supplies in the old bag slung over his shoulder, walking steadily toward the train station. When he arrived, the station was already stirring to life. The first commuters were arriving, some yawning, others checking watches, and some already lost in their phones or in conversation. The platform was cold and slightly damp from the night's mist, but he barely noticed. He started his usual tasks, sweeping and wiping benches, picking up discarded newspapers, and making sure the tracks were free of debris. Every corner of the station was familiar to him, every crack in the floor, every faded line on the platform. He moved efficiently. It's like someone who had memorized the space through years of careful attention. The day was moving along normally, until a small voice caught his attention. A child was standing near the edge of the platform, holding a bright red toy in his small hands. He was completely unaware of the danger, looking down the tracks with wide eyes. Something about the child's focus made him uneasy. He dropped his broom and walked slowly toward him, calling softly, "Hey, little one. You shouldn't stand so close to the edge." The boy turned, startled, his eyes wide, and gave a quick nod. But curiosity drew him back to the tracks. He inched forward, oblivious to the fact that a train was approaching. The janitor's heart raced. He ran faster this time, shouting, "Stay back!" The crowd around them barely noticed, everyone too focused on their own world, but he had no time to wait for help. Before he could reach the boy, the train's horn sounded in the distance. The roar of the engine echoed through the station, and the boy froze, eyes wide with fear. Without thinking, the janitor lunged, grabbing the boy just as he teetered on the edge. He pulled him back forcefully, both of them landing hard on the platform. Dust and small pebbles scattered around them, and the janitor felt a sharp sting on his knee where it scraped the concrete. People gasped, some rushing to see what had happened. The boy clung to him, trembling, tears welling in his eyes. He gently lifted the child, checking that he was unhurt. "It's okay, you're safe now," he said softly. The boy nodded, sniffling, and buried his face in the janitor's chest. The janitor's heart thumped, not just from the physical effort, but from the sudden rush of fear and relief. He had seen accidents before, but the thought of a child almost being hit by a train was almost unbearable. The boy's parents arrived. Moments later, rushing toward them with panic on their faces. They had been distracted, talking to a ticket officer, and hadn't noticed the boy wandering so close to danger. The mother's hands shook as she reached for her child, and the father's face was pale. They hugged him tightly, thanking the janitor over and over. He waved them off, insisting that he had just done what anyone should do. "It's nothing, really. He's safe. That's what matters," he said. The commotion drew the attention of others on the platform. Some passengers whispered about the heroic act, others clapped quietly, and a few shook their heads, impressed. But the janitor didn't notice them. His focus was entirely on the child and making sure he was unharmed. The boy looked up at him, eyes wide with a mix of fear and gratitude. The janitor gave a small smile and ruffled the child's hair gently, hoping to ease the lingering panic. After the initial shock, the janitor helped the parents calm the boy. They gave him a warm drink and some snacks they had brought, and he sat quietly, allowing the family to settle. The janitor's knee throbbed from the scrape, but he barely noticed. The adrenaline of the moment still coursed through him, keeping him alert. He glanced around the platform, ensuring there were no other dangers and that the train was safely out of the way. As the situation calmed, the janitor returned to his duties, but the events of the morning stayed with him. He felt a strange mix of exhaustion and satisfaction. It had been a close call, and he knew how easily things could have gone wrong. He thought about how small decisions, like watching a child for a second longer, could change everything. The boy kept glancing at him from the safety of his parents' arms, and the janitor gave a small wave, which the boy returned shyly. There was an unspoken bond between them, a connection forged in a moment of danger and care. The janitor reminded himself that this was what life was about, being present, acting when it mattered, and protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. The rest of the day passed slowly, with the janitor occasionally glancing toward the family, making sure they were still safe and comfortable. He moved through the station with a renewed sense of purpose. Every sweep of the broom, every bench, wiped, every piece of litter picked up felt more meaningful. He understood that his work, though unnoticed by many, contributed to safety and order, and that sometimes it could even save lives. Even as he worked, he reflected on the fragility of life. Child safety, a moment's distraction, a second's hesitation, it all mattered. He thought about how unpredictable life could be and how important it was to stay aware, to be kind, and to act when it was needed most. He had spent years moving through life quietly, helping when he could. But today had shown him the real weight of responsibility. By evening, the station began to empty, and the janitor finally allowed himself a short rest. He leaned against a pillar, closing his eyes briefly and feeling the ache in his muscles. His knee throbbed from the scrape, a reminder of the morning's events. He smiled to himself, though knowing he had done something important. He had acted without thought for reward or recognition. He had acted simply because it was right. The family had long left by this point, but he imagined the boy safe at home, perhaps talking excitedly about the morning's adventure. The janitor knew he would never see the impact of his actions directly, but he trusted that it was there, quietly changing lives. That was enough for him. He packed up his supplies and walked toward the exit, feeling the cool evening air on his face. As he left the station, he thought about how one small act of bravery could make such a difference. He had not considered himself a hero. He had only done what he felt he must do. But in that moment, standing in the fading light, he realized that courage was not about grand gestures or fame. It was about presence, attention, and willingness to act when it mattered most. And in that quiet understanding, he felt a deep sense of peace. The walk home was reflective. He passed by the shops closing for the night, children running to their families and neighbors greeting him with small nods or waves. Life carried on around him, unaware of the morning's drama, but he carried it in his heart. It was a reminder that life was precious, and that each moment, no matter how small, held the possibility of change. When he arrived home, he cleaned his uniform, treated the scrape on his knee, and prepared a simple dinner. His mind wandered back to the boy, hoping he would be safe and happy. Ate slowly, thinking about the morning and how a single moment had brought such intensity, fear, and relief. He realized that heroism was often quiet, unnoticed, and yet profoundly impactful. As he lay down to sleep that night, exhaustion weighed on him, but so did a sense of accomplishment. He had faced a moment of danger, acted without hesitation, and ensured the safety of another human being. He drifted to sleep, feeling the warmth of having done something meaningful, ready to face another day, knowing that courage and kindness could sometimes change everything in a single instant. After the train incident, life at the station slowly returned to its usual rhythm. The morning sun rose, casting a soft glow over the platform, and commuters moved in and out like a river, unaware of the drama that had unfolded a few days before. The janitor returned to his routine, sweeping floors, cleaning benches, and keeping the station orderly. Though the events of that day had been intense, he didn't dwell on them. He believed that if someone needed help, anyone would do the same. For him, it was simply part of life. The boy he had saved occasionally crossed his mind, but he assumed the family had gone on their way and would be fine. He imagined the little boy playing safely at home, perhaps telling stories of a kind man who had pulled him back from danger. The janitor smiled at the thought, feeling quietly satisfied, though he never expected any acknowledgement. Weeks passed, and the station's routine became a comforting rhythm again. He noticed the boy on a few occasions, always accompanied by his parents. Each time, the boy would glance at him shyly, sometimes waving, sometimes hiding behind his mother. There was a cautious curiosity in the child's eyes, and the janitor responded with gentle nods or a soft smile. Though he did not know it, the boy was carefully observing the man who had saved his life, trying to understand the quiet courage and kindness that radiated from him. The boy's parents were equally careful. They often lingered nearby, speaking softly to each other while watching the janitor from a distance. They knew that the man had saved their son from a tragedy that could have changed their lives forever. They wanted to reward him, but they were wary of drawing too much attention. The janitor's humility was evident in every interaction. He refused thanks, brushed off praise, and returned to his work without seeking recognition. That very humility made the parents determined to find a meaningful way to express their gratitude. Meanwhile, the janitor continued his life without realizing the significance of the boy's family. His days were filled with small, quiet acts of care. He helped an elderly man navigate the steps, returned a wallet to a forgetful passenger, and even guided a lost tourist to the right platform. Every day he encountered dozens of people, some noticing him, some not, but he remained steady in his purpose. He was a quiet presence in a busy world. Acting out of instinct and compassion rather than expectation, the boy, too, was learning from observation. He was careful and thoughtful, noticing how the janitor moved, how he interacted with others, and how he responded to challenges. There was no arrogance in the man, no desire to show off or be recognized. Everything he did was grounded in responsibility and care. It fascinated the child, who had never met anyone quite like him before. In the boy's young mind, the janitor became a figure of quiet strength, someone who could act decisively when it mattered most without seeking reward or attention. One afternoon, the janitor noticed the boy lingering at the station again. The child was holding a small notebook, scribbling something furiously while glancing toward the janitor from time to time. Curious, the janitor approached gently, kneeling to speak at eye level. "What are you writing there, little one?" he asked softly. The boy hesitated, clutching the notebook tightly. His parents were nearby, watching silently. After a moment, he opened it slightly, showing sketches of a man sweeping the platform, helping people, and smiling. The janitor's eyes softened as he looked at the simple drawings. He nodded. "That's very good. I like it. Keep drawing. It's important to practice and make things with your hands." "No?" The boy smiled faintly, feeling seen, even in his own quiet way. Over time, the janitor became an unnoticed but constant presence in the boy's life. He never intruded, never demanded attention, yet he was a figure of stability and trust. The parents observed this too, realizing that their son was learning important lessons about courage, kindness, and humility simply by watching the man who had saved him. They began discussing privately how they could appropriately acknowledge his heroism, knowing that he would refuse anything overt, yet feeling compelled to honor him in a meaningful way. One evening, the janitor was finishing up his work when the station manager approached him. "I heard about what happened with the boy," the manager said quietly. "I just wanted to say, well, it was brave of you. You could have been hurt yourself." The janitor waved him off, brushing his hand across his uniform to dust off some dirt. "It was nothing. Just doing what anyone should do. The boy is safe. That's all that matters." He didn't speak of pride or recognition. For him, the act itself held all the meaning it needed. After the manager left, the janitor sat quietly for a moment, listening to the distant hum of the trains. The events of that day replayed in his mind, but without fear or tension this time. He reflected on the fragility of life and the way a single moment could carry enormous weight. That thought stayed with him, a quiet reminder of why he did what he did every day. The boy's family remained a careful but present influence in his life. They never intruded or called attention to themselves. They simply observed, offering small gestures of thanks, a nod, a quiet smile, or a whispered thank you when the janitor helped them navigate the station. They respected his dignity and humility, understanding that any overt attempt to reward him might be rejected or cause discomfort. Instead, they chose patience, waiting for the right moment to express their gratitude in a way that honored both the janitor and the values he represented. Meanwhile, the janitor continued to live quietly, finding satisfaction in the small successes of his daily life. A floor swept clean, a bench wiped down, a lost wallet returned. These were his victories. He never sought applause or recognition. He simply acted because it was the right thing to do. It was in these small, quiet moments that his true character shone. One rainy morning, the boy and his parents appeared at the station again. The janitor noticed the boy slipping slightly on the wet platform and rushed to steady him. The boy looked up, eyes wide, and mouthed a silent thank you. The janitor smiled and patted his shoulder. "Be careful," he said gently. The parents thanked him quietly, and he returned to his duties without further conversation. He didn't know that this simple act of care would be remembered by the family for years to come. The janitor's life continued in this rhythm, quiet, modest, and full of unrecognized heroism. He never imagined that the boy he had saved was the son of one of the wealthiest and most influential people in the city. To him, it was just another child, another human being in need of help. That simple perspective, that refusal to be swayed by status or wealth, was what made him remarkable, though he never sought acknowledgement for it. As the days passed, the boy's admiration for the janitor grew. He noticed the way he treated everyone with respect, how he moved through life quietly yet decisively when action was needed. The parents saw this too and quietly began discussing how to honor him without intruding on his modesty. They understood that his humility was central to his character, and any reward needed to respect that. The janitor, meanwhile, remained unaware of the growing significance of his actions. He continued to move through the station with purpose and care, helping those in need and maintaining the rhythm of daily life. To him, every small act of kindness was part of a larger picture of human decency. Each moment an opportunity to do what was right without expectation. He had no idea that his quiet presence was shaping the life of a child who would one day remember him not just as a savior, but as a model of courage, humility, and compassion. He remained steadfast in his principles, a silent guardian of the station. A humble man whose life, though ordinary in appearance, was extraordinary in its quiet strength. Evening fell, and he finished his work walking home under the soft glow of streetlights. He thought about the day, reflecting on the small victories and the moments of connection. Each person he helped, each obstacle he removed, was part of the fabric of life, and he understood that his actions, though unnoticed by many, mattered deeply. When he arrived home, he prepared a modest dinner, reflecting quietly on the events of the week. He thought about the child, the family, and the small ways in which life intersected. He didn't know the boy's true identity, nor did he need to. For him, it was enough to have been present, to have acted when it mattered, and to have lived with integrity and kindness. As he lay down to sleep that night, he felt a quiet satisfaction. Life was unpredictable, fragile, and fleeting, but in each moment of care, there was meaning. He drifted off with the simple understanding that he had done his best, that he had acted with courage and heart, and that in the quietest ways. He was making a difference that would ripple far beyond his imagination. Weeks passed since the near accident, and the janitor continued his routine at the station. Every day felt familiar, almost comforting, yet there was an unspoken weight in the air, a quiet tension that only he didn't notice. The child he had saved continued to appear at the station occasionally, always cautious, always watching. His parents were careful, making sure not to intrude, quietly observing the man who had saved their son. One morning, as the janitor swept the platform, a black car pulled up near the station entrance. A well-dressed man and woman stepped out, carrying themselves with a quiet authority. They did not hurry, their gaze scanning the area as if assessing everything. The janitor noticed them, but did not think much of it. He assumed they were commuters or business people. They approached the station manager, speaking in hushed tones, and the janitor returned to his work, sweeping and wiping the benches as if nothing had changed. The couple's interest, however, was not in the station itself. They were focused on the janitor. They had been watching him for weeks, gathering information about the man who had saved their son's life. He had acted without hesitation, without seeking attention, without asking for anything in return. That quiet courage and humility had left a deep impression. They were determined to meet him and express their gratitude in a way that respected his dignity and character. Later that day, the station manager called the janitor aside. "There's someone who wants to meet you," he said. "They're here about the boy you saved." The janitor looked puzzled. "About the boy?" "He's fine. That's all that matters," he replied. The manager insisted. So the janitor nodded reluctantly and followed him to a small waiting area near the station office. When he entered the room, a well-dressed man and woman stood, smiling warmly. The boy was with them, standing slightly behind, shyly watching. The janitor's eyes widened slightly, but he remained composed. "You saved him," the man said quietly. "We wanted to meet you personally and thank you." The janitor shook his head, brushing it off. "It was nothing. I just did what anyone would do." He gestured for them not to make a fuss. "He's safe. That's all that matters." The woman stepped forward, her voice gentle but firm. "We understand your humility, but your actions went far beyond ordinary kindness. You saved our son's life. Words cannot express our gratitude." The janitor nodded, feeling slightly uncomfortable with the attention. He was used to quiet work, two small acts that no one noticed. Recognition was not something he sought. The boy, still shy, stepped closer. His small hand reached out and held the janitor's. "Thank you," he whispered. His eyes were filled with genuine gratitude, and the janitor felt a warmth in his chest he could not describe. He smiled gently, patting the boy's hand. "You're welcome, little one. Just be careful, all right?" The boy nodded solemnly. The parents exchanged a glance. Then the man spoke again. "We want to offer you something, a gesture of our thanks. We know you may refuse, and we will respect that, but please consider it." The janitor hesitated. He had never expected anything like this, never even imagined that saving a child could lead to such attention. He shook his head. "I can't accept anything. I just did what was right." His voice was firm but polite. The woman nodded, understanding his position. "We respect your decision, but please know that we will always remember your actions and the courage you showed. Our son's life was changed because of you." The janitor felt a lump in his throat, but remained silent, letting the words settle. Over the following days, the janitor continued his work. But the knowledge of the family's gratitude lingered in his mind. He realized that sometimes, even acts done without thought of reward could ripple far beyond one moment. The boy's parents had witnessed his humility and courage, and their respect was a testament to the kind of impact that quiet integrity could have. One afternoon, the janitor noticed the boy drawing quietly on a bench while waiting for his parents. The sketches were of the station, the janitor at work, and people around him. He knelt to look, genuinely impressed. "These are very good," he said softly. "Keep drawing. It's important to capture what you see and feel." The boy smiled faintly, and the parents observed from a short distance, pleased to see their child learning from someone so genuine, as days turned into weeks. The family began making small gestures of acknowledgement. Sometimes a polite note of thanks would be left at the station office. Other times, they would quietly ensure the janitor had the supplies he needed, or that the work environment was made easier for him. They never sought to impose, never sought to shame him with recognition, but their actions conveyed deep respect and gratitude. The janitor, true to his nature, accepted these gestures quietly. He continued his work with the same diligence and care, never allowing the acknowledgement to change him. His life remained modest, his principles intact, and his heart centered on the small acts that defined his character. The boy continued to observe and learn, understanding that heroism was not about accolades or recognition, but about courage, presence, and the willingness to act when it mattered most. The parents saw this and felt a profound sense of relief and admiration. They had wanted to teach their child the value of humility and kindness, and here in the janitor's quiet example, they found the perfect lesson. One evening, as the janitor prepared to leave the station, the man and woman approached again. This time, their tone was more personal, less formal. "We just want you to know that what you did means more than words can express," the father said. "Our son's life was saved because of your quick thinking and courage. We will never forget it." The janitor nodded silently, feeling a quiet satisfaction. He did not need more than that. The acknowledgement, heartfelt and genuine, was enough. As he walked home that night, the janitor reflected on the events. Life had a way of presenting unexpected challenges and opportunities. His actions, though instinctive and unremarkable to him, had created a bond that transcended social status, wealth, or recognition. He felt a deep sense of purpose, understanding that courage and kindness were valuable in ways that could never be measured. At home, he sat quietly by the window looking out at the city lights. He thought about the boy, the parents, and the unspoken lessons that had been exchanged. It was a reminder that life was filled with moments that could alter paths, create connections, and teach values that could last a lifetime. He felt honored simply to have played a small part in such a profound way. Days passed, and the janitor returned to the station as usual, carrying out his work with the same attention and care. The family remained a quiet presence in his life, their gratitude expressed in subtle ways, and the boy continued to learn from the example of the man who had saved him. The janitor did not seek acknowledgement, did not crave praise, and did not alter his routine. He remained the same, humble, dedicated man, whose actions had created ripples far beyond what he could imagine. As evening fell, the janitor walked home, reflecting on the meaning of bravery and kindness. He understood that recognition was not necessary for heroism, and that the true reward lay in knowing that he had acted rightly when it mattered most. And with that thought, he felt a deep, unshakable peace. Ready to face whatever the next day would bring, quietly, humbly, and with an unwavering heart, the janitor woke up that morning with the same routine, but something felt different. The day seemed brighter, though the sun had not fully risen. He went through his motions, preparing for work, sweeping his apartment floor, washing a few dishes, and quietly eating his breakfast. He felt a strange anticipation in the air, though he could not explain why. Perhaps it was the rhythm of life at the station, or perhaps he was simply more aware of the possibilities that each day held as he walked to the train station. The streets were alive with the usual morning chaos. Vendors called out to early customers, children ran to school, and commuters hustled along the sidewalks. Yet the janitor noticed small details: the smile of a shopkeeper, the way a leaf fluttered in the breeze, the soft call of a bird. For him, life had always been about noticing the little things. And today, those little things seemed to carry extra weight when he arrived at the station. He was greeted with a scene that immediately drew his attention. The boy he had saved and his parents were waiting for him. They were not in a rush. They stood calmly, their eyes watching him as he approached. The janitor felt a sense of curiosity and unease. He had done his duty, and now the family wanted to see him again. He wondered why the boy ran forward the moment he saw him, shouting his name with delight. He jumped into the janitor's arms, hugging him tightly. The janitor laughed softly, holding the child, feeling the warmth and innocence of the boy. "Be careful, little one," he said, patting his back. The child pulled back slightly, looking up at him with eyes full of gratitude and admiration. The boy's parents stepped forward, and the janitor could now see the seriousness in their expressions. "We wanted to meet you properly," the father said, "and to explain just how much you mean to us. Our son's life was in danger that day, and you saved him. We can never repay you for that, but we want to make sure you understand the depth of our gratitude." The janitor shook his head, waving them off. "There is nothing to repay. He is safe, and that is enough. That is all I needed." His voice was steady, but he could feel a tightness in his chest, a mixture of humility and quiet pride. The mother stepped closer, holding a small envelope. "We insist," she said softly. "This is just a token, a way to thank you for what you did. We know you may refuse, and that is fine. But please, accept it." The janitor took the envelope cautiously, opening it to see a letter explaining that the boy he saved was their only child, and that they wanted to ensure he had a better life for his family because of the heroic act he had performed. There was also an offer to provide support for his children's education and to make his home life more comfortable, if he wished. The janitor's eyes widened slightly, and he put the envelope down for a moment, overwhelmed. He had never imagined that his actions could lead to such generosity or impact. Yet he remained cautious, wanting to ensure that his humble nature would not be compromised by sudden attention or wealth. "I can't accept something like that," he said quietly. "I did what I felt I had to do. I didn't do it for reward, and I never expected anything." His voice carried the firmness of a man grounded in principles. The father nodded, understanding his perspective. "We respect that," he said. "But please understand, this is not just a gift. It is an acknowledgement of the courage and humanity you displayed. It is meant to help you and your family, nothing more. We only ask that you accept it in the spirit it is given." The janitor took a deep breath, considering their words. He realized that their offer was not meant to change him, but to recognize and support him, to honor what he had done. After a long moment of contemplation, he finally nodded. "I will accept it, but only because it can help my family," he said. "That is all. My work and my heart remain the same." The parents smiled, relieved and respectful. The boy looked at him with bright eyes, happy and safe, a living reminder of the event that had brought them together. Over the following days, the janitor's life began to change quietly. He received the promised support, improving his modest home and providing for his family in ways he had never imagined possible. Yet he remained grounded, continuing his work at the station, sweeping, cleaning, and helping people with the same diligence and care. The recognition did not alter his humility. It only made his ability to provide for his loved ones more secure. The boy's presence became a source of joy for him. He would sometimes see the child drawing, playing, or simply observing the world around him. Their bond grew stronger, built not on wealth or recognition, but on shared experience, trust, and respect. The janitor taught the boy about responsibility, kindness, and courage, not through words alone, but through his actions every day. The family became close, but they never intruded or forced attention. They respected the janitor's dignity and independence, ensuring that their assistance did not overwhelm or embarrass him. The boy learned from the janitor's humility, seeing that true heroism was quiet, steady, and consistent. Each interaction reinforced the lessons of bravery and humanity that the boy would carry into adulthood. Life at the station continued in its familiar rhythm. Commuters came and went, some noticing the janitor, some not. Yet he moved through the station with the same purpose, keeping it clean and safe, helping those in need and maintaining the quiet order that defined his work. The presence of the family, the boy, and the recognition he had received did not change the core of who he was. He remained a humble man, dedicated to his principles and committed to kindness. One afternoon, as he was finishing his duties, the boy approached him with a small drawing. "I drew this for you," he said, handing over the paper. It depicted the janitor saving the boy from the train, surrounded by light and warmth. The janitor looked at it, touched, and smiled. "Thank you, little one. This means a lot," he said, his voice soft but full of emotion. The boy's parents watched from a short distance, proud of the bond forming between them. As the months passed, the janitor's life improved in tangible ways, but his character and humility remained unchanged. He continued to work diligently, help strangers, and guide the boy with patience and care. He became a quiet legend in the station, known by some for his dedication, admired by others for his kindness, yet never seeking recognition or fame. The boy grew, learning from the janitor's example. He understood that courage was not about grand gestures, but about presence, awareness, and the willingness to act when needed. He saw that humility was a strength, that kindness could create ripples far beyond what one could imagine, and that true heroism often went unnoticed. One evening, the janitor walked home after completing his duties. The streets were calm, the city lights reflecting off wet pavement after a brief rain. He thought about the journey he had taken. From a humble man performing his daily tasks to someone who had saved a life and touched a family in ways he could never have foreseen. Yet he felt no pride in the conventional sense. He only felt the quiet satisfaction of knowing he had acted rightly. At home, prepared a simple dinner reflecting on the events that had changed his life. He thought about the boy, the family, and the small, quiet ways in which heroism and kindness could ripple through the world. He realized that one single act performed without hesitation and with a pure heart could alter destinies, forge bonds, and create lasting impact. As he lay down to sleep that night, he felt a profound peace. Life was unpredictable, fragile, and filled with moments that required courage and compassion. Yet, in every act of kindness, there was meaning, and in every moment of bravery, there was power. He had lived with integrity, humility, and heart, and now he could rest, knowing that his actions had changed a life and, in turn, his own. The next morning, he would wake up, follow his routine, and continue to move through life quietly, helping when he could, and living with the same unwavering principles. But the world around him had shifted. The boy, once saved from danger, would grow up carrying the lessons learned from his humble guardian. And the janitor, though unchanged in spirit, would always know the quiet power of a single act of courage and kindness, a reminder that even ordinary lives could leave extraordinary marks on the world.